To read the Bible in a year, you need 30 minutes to listen or read and 5 days each week. Join us here at St.Andrews for Bible in a Year.
So this is week 23.
Yeah, the last part of week 22 and week 23.
Are you done
No?
with week 26?
No. No, so I numbered the days as well.
Oh, I thought those were all check marks. I'm
No,
like, I know I'm barely keeping up, but
I'm week 24
okay.
in my reading, but I'm not that far ahead.
Okay. I mean, that would be nice if you were, but I feel better only being a week.
Being a week
you.
ahead already feels like I'm reaching back and trying to remember what was last week.
I know it'd be helpful if I could get a week ahead too. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Although if I do get a week ahead, all that's going to happen is Holy Week's going to reshuffle it.
Well, that's why I've been trying to get a week ahead, where it's either Holy Week or
We're both going on vacation in June.
So one of those two things.
Oh yeah, we booked plane tickets last night.
Oh yeah.
Cost $3,000. We're doing 2 one-ways because we're going to Albuquerque and then we're coming back from Denver. And
Oh, okay.
you know, we didn't buy the very cheapest fare. You know, now there's like, 4 levels of economy?
Well,
it's insane.
Did you go with Southwest or?
No, because we are going to fly out of Harrisburg.
Oh, okay.
We have drives on the other side too, so. I mean, but we go out of Harrisburg at 6 a.m. and get back at 11 p.m. Right? Like,
Long days.
we're going to leave at 3:30. It's insane. Yeah.
Good trip though.
I think it'll be a good trip though. Yeah.
Exploring a bit of the West.
I mean, the kids are going to get to see the Southwest and the Rocky Mountains. And we're going to drive through sections of it, so they really get to see it.
Yeah.
And apparently, I was talking with Erica Sunday afternoon, I was trying to figure out if we needed to get to Denver to see their Natural History Museum, but we don't. Colorado Springs has the second largest dinosaur museum.
Ah.
And it's like, from Erica's, we could go that way up. And so, I mean, we'd still have a 2-hour drive on the other side of the dinosaur museum, but 4 hours. So we leave super early, dinosaur museum, and then 2 hours.
Yeah.
Straight up a mountain, but...
And it's not like you're at the height of the dinosaur era.
I know. If we plan this and Dash all of a sudden decides to move on from dinosaurs...
Well, have they discovered Dinosaur Train?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They've moved on from Dinosaur Train.
Really?
But last summer, Riley could do the whole theme song word for word. The whole thing. Yeah. Yeah. I know, but they've moved on. They don't watch it anymore. But Dashiell still really likes dinosaurs. So, and that's like dinosaur bone country,
Yeah.
you know? Much more than around here.
We have snails, fossilized snail shells.
So in California, sometimes you'd find arrowheads.
Well, you can still find those, but with the fossils, it's snails.
Yeah. So we're not doing the Grand Canyon, but we're doing New Mexico and some of Colorado. So that'll be good.
Yeah, that'll be a fun trip.
They might have to go to the Grand Canyon on their own. I don't know if we can hit every part of the country multiple times.
But that's part of growing is you have your own adventures, your own.
Yeah.
We want to go do this when we're.
But as you can imagine, my mother was very intentional with family vacations.
Yeah.
You know, she knew there's only so long, so we had these clear experiences we had to hit. So, yeah, I think it'll be good though. All right. So Solomon?
Solomon. I always struggle a bit with Solomon.
Yeah.
Like he feels like the wisest fool.
Hmm.
Like I love the story of how God says, you know, what do you want? And he has at least the foresight to ask for wisdom. And he starts out very wise, and that just feels like it's a decay from there.
Yeah. I know. And Proverbs is so much about, like, the way of wisdom, like it being a path. It's not like this moment or this moment. It's like a path and a way of life. But I wonder, and I didn't look it up, but I wonder how old Solomon was when he became king. Because I kind of wonder if it's like sticking a high schooler on the throne.
Maybe.
You know, and like they know they need wisdom, but then as they sort of get used to things, they stop being humble.
And he had a lot to not be humble about.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I don't know. So the beginning, I mean, both First Kings and Chronicles gives us like the beginning of what he does.
And I do love how the readings kind of bring that into play, and then it's right in the Proverbs. Mm-hmm. So I've actually appreciated that. And I have a thought on Proverbs I want to pick your brain on when we get there.
I did not prepare, so we should see how that goes.
I think you're...
I do have a friend who has a PhD in Proverbs, wisdom literature.
What? That's an option?
Mm-hmm. Wisdom literature, yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty cool. But, yeah.
So, Solomon, though, at the beginning...
So he's, ordained king. God asks him, what do you want? He says for wisdom. And that's where we get, right after that prayer for wisdom, we get that story with the two prostitutes and the child.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's so interesting. Like, this is the proof of his wisdom, like this story.
And that's...
And it is kind of brilliant. Because the one who's the actual mother is going to do anything to keep her child from harm.
It's brutally brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
But it does show. I mean, he's living into this wisdom that has been given. He's seeing there's a pattern of behavior that we live into and exploiting that. And he has that throughout his reign. Just feels like it goes for good to not good.
Well, now let's consider his context a little bit more. I mean, so he asks for wisdom, and God then also gives him riches and honor. So that no other king can compare to him for all of his days.
And that's even brought in New Testament.
Yes.
Saying that even the splendor of Solomon, so it's something that has been.
And it was something Israel needed, in a sense. They needed this season of peace, which they got. Right?
Yeah, and I guess some showmanship.
And, they have a clear place now in this region where before they didn't, not too long ago. So, I mean, but also, it's not like David didn't have concubines.
No, he had his share, but again, the number.
I know, it is a crazy number.
When David is put into exile...
I'm trying my best. I can't. There's nothing I can do about it.
I always reverse the numbers. 700 wives and 300 concubines?
I don't know.
Or was it...
I don't know.
We're not to that section yet, but it was a lot.
It was a lot.
But David had something like 18 that we get as a number when he's in exile from Absalom.
Yeah.
So...
And, I mean, Solomon's mother was a big part of his formation. In a good way.
Well, and we see that even when the transition happens and she comes in requesting... we talked about that last week. Where Solomon bows to Bathsheba when she's requesting someone for someone.
Oh,
Abishag, the Shumite.
Yes.
To be given to Adonijah.
His other brother.
Yes.
Yeah, but then he says no. So I don't know if that's a great example.
He at least bows to her, so there's some sign of respect.
Yes, all right. There you go. I don't know. Okay, so in chapter 4, I also found it really interesting that, David had his mighty men, and then Solomon has 12 officers in 4:7 who provide food for the king and his household. So it almost feels like David has his mighty men, which is more than 12, and Solomon has 12 amazing stewards. It's just interesting. Like it's very clear on this is a new season in the life of Israel. Battle is not the focus.
Yeah, it's actually really the establishment of the government and system.
Yeah.
That would be for that time. So, one interesting kind of correlation I was thinking about is the example with Solomon's wisdom, going back just a bit.
Yeah.
2 prostitutes came before the king. And just, you don't get that in a lot of history texts where anyone of that level would be found before the king for judgment and fair judgment. And just how, even in that early kingdom, that is flawed, we find that everyone has a place before.
Everyone gets to have their moment to
Justice.
say their piece.
Yeah.
It's important. It reminds me, our history, what I hold on to so often is how John Adams defended the soldiers in the Boston Massacre. The British soldiers.
Yeah.
Because he really believed, and because he did that, it's been lived out for a long time, that we presume people are innocent and we defend them. And they get to have due process too.
And it's a piece of that ancient wisdom that's actually really good. Subtle.
Yeah. All right, so what about Proverbs? This is a book we usually pull verses out.
Yeah, because it's a lot of good one-liners.
It is. It is. But reading all of it, I was getting a lot of themes coming through.
Well, and the biggest theme I was getting up front, where it's he intentionally personifies wisdom and folly, and it follows throughout where there's that personification.
Yes.
That is to, and you started us with it where, what did you say? It's a pursuit?
Like a path.
Yeah.
Like I've
okay,
seen
path.
that language over and over again. Like this way and this path, those, at least in this version, those were the words that were coming again and again.
And that's what I was getting. I've read Proverbs, cover to cover before, but I've never sat with it as that personified pursuit of what is wisdom or what is folly, and which of the two are you seeking. That's what I was getting out of it this first time. I think we're on the same page of that. It's just you're seeing it as a path.
Yeah. And in a way of life. And I think that's really what I was getting. And I mean that fear of the Lord comes in, but that language of a path, it's over and over again. I mean, oh gosh, I mean it's so many places it's hard to pull out a place. But so 2:20, so you will walk in the way of good and keep to the paths of righteous. So those paths and those ways. And even I memorized 3:5-7 was one of those VBS Bible verses when I was much younger. He will make your paths straight, or make straight your paths. Trust the Lord with all your heart. So a lot of those elements were really coming out to me as I just went through, this section.
So the other side of it that's interesting is the interaction of it. Because part of what I'm pulling out is the pieces of wisdom given to the son, or that feels like it's being handed down to his son. As I'm looking at my own children, and okay, well, wait a minute, these are good pieces of wisdom to hand down to my kids, to make sure I highlight with them.
And it does have both. I mean, we see in 1:8, it's your father's instruction and your mother's teaching. So, I mean, they're also paired. And wisdom, all right, I'm pretty sure I'm getting this right. So wisdom is a feminine form of the word in both Hebrew and Greek.
Okay.
And so, well, there's two things here that I don't usually get deep into theology, but Proverbs goes there pretty quick. And so wisdom gets personified with a lot of feminine attributes. And that's why we get to the end of the book in Proverbs 31, which some people think is like an instruction manual, is a personification of a woman, of wisdom enacted. But yet also, there are scholars who pull things together and see how wisdom is also an echo of Jesus. That Jesus shows us the way, and that wisdom is found in seeing how God's word is lived out. So wisdom also becomes a feminine attribute of God. Yeah.
So the thing I was told when we did the wisdom literature with Hebrew was it's poetry.
Mm-hmm.
You got to hang in there through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because the language rules don't always apply perfectly. And understand that it is portraying what is the best images from the culture.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have a perfect one-to-one matchup, but it's giving you what are truths to seek.
Yes. So, I mean, there's those elements of wisdom that are clear, and then there's the context around it of just that poetic language. Like, one of them... So, a lot of the same images we see in the Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
And then in chapter 5... 15, we start to get these water images. And I almost started to get that, that psalm came into mind, as the deer pants for water, so my soul longs after you. It's almost like they were connecting in a way.
Well, and that's interesting, because that's even looking at internalizing and looking to your own family for support. Not chasing after what are the flashy desires of life and flesh.
Yeah, and that's in there a lot. Like, don't go in this trap, or don't get distracted by that.
How you doing on that, Solomon?
Yeah. Well, and... Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was wise in many ways.
And foolish in others.
Yes. Not all of them. But yeah.
But Proverbs is good. There are a lot of good pieces to draw out of it. Is there a favorite proverb that you have?
My favorite's in a much later chapter.
Okay, so we'll tackle that later.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite in this section?
No, not really. I mean, lots of good pieces of wisdom. Mm-hmm. When we get into what are next week's readings, there's some good things in there that it's, okay, yeah, this is... I guess the way I've seen Proverbs is it's fitting to different times of life.
Oh, like different seasons?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there are different points that I've resounded over, and in some of next week's readings, it was, oh, okay.
A little bit more.
This is where I'm at, yeah.
Okay, well, one thing that compared, in chapter 6, sort of starting in verse 6, but more in verse 8, it's talking about an ant, but, preparing the bread for the summer, and she gathers the food, and how long will you lie there, and when are you going to get up from your sleep, and from reading stories to my children, it felt like the little red hen, right?
Oh.
Who will help me collect the grain? Oh, not I. I've got to take a nap. I've got to do this. Who will help me take the grain to the mill? No, I can't do that. Who will help me? Who will help me eat the bread? No. That story just, it says ant, but I'm like, oh, it's like the little red hen.
It is, and now that it's interesting. How many of these would have been told?
And sort of his stories that way.
Yeah.
Our ant one is the ants go marching, but But yeah, those sort of stories you tell to children and help them hope they grasp it. Although, Dashiell loves this song about the turtle and the rabbit in this race, right? But he still wants to be the rabbit. I'm like, we're not getting it. We're not getting it. Like, the turtle finishes the race and he wins. He's like, oh, but I want to go fast. I'm like, okay. The wisdom will come later. And I was talking about, even if you go fast, maybe finish before you stop.
He'll get there. But he loves to run.
He does. He does.
And that's cute on Sundays. There goes Dashiell.
There he goes. All around.
But
yeah. I think this path language, though, is just really powerful. Like, reminding us that in each day as we go through it, are we seeking wisdom? Are we seeking to live towards God's way and wisdom? Or are we just going along being distracted by everything around us?
yeah, that's fair. Path, pursuit. It's one of the analogies I've used to the kids is, what are you feeding? The positive or the negative?
Mm-hmm.
Just breaking it down that simple, but it's that. What are you pursuing? What is the path you're on? And, as you have been reading this, what are the Proverbs that stand out to you? Let us know.
Yeah, we should put a post up, see if people want to share their
Yeah.
favorite Proverbs as we go through.
We'll get that up tomorrow.
That'd be great.
So, you good, or do you want to spend some more time in Proverbs?
I think we will spend some more time, but I
We've
think
got
that
about
was...
another 20 chapters.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. And, we haven't even talked about Romans yet.
Yeah, we're into Romans 8, and, yay. Sorry, this is the fun stuff.
Romans 8 is great.
Yes.
It's a wonderful chapter. Where'd you go? There it is. Yes.
I love how Romans 8 begins. Therefore, there is now no condemnation.
It does feel like a shift, doesn't it? Okay, we've talked about all of this, but now...
And it's no condemnation in the life of Jesus Christ. Where it's this building up, we're here, God has done this new thing, and we're following. We're building this community. We're building something that looks entirely different than and Paul gets into that, than every other piece of what this world is going to try and do.
Yeah, and then it starts to weave in this language about the Spirit.
Yeah.
The Spirit is life because of righteousness, and the Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you. And then bringing in this spirit of adoption. Where am I? 8:15. The spirit of adoption by whom we cry, Abba, Father. And
The Spirit bears witness for us
that we are children of God. Yeah. But then Paul, verse 18, Paul's rough, right? I mean, he lives a really difficult life after he follows Christ.
Yeah, it's not
smooth. Things are not settled. They're not comfortable. He's in prison a lot. But here we go. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that's to be revealed to us. And you're like, okay. It's one of those things where Paul's like, trust me.
See, I've always looked at it as you can go and have an adventure. And adventures are not going to be easy. They're going to have speed bumps and rough moments. And what does it look like to go through those? Or you can stay at home and be comfortable. And it feels like the path that Paul has chosen is that adventure. And he's full in.
Yeah.
It's not easy. But he's full in and living into it to the fullest. That's where I've always pictured Paul with this. But one of the pieces of language that I love out of Romans 8 is how he talks about the whole of creation has been groaning together in pains of childbirth until now. And not only creation, but we ourselves, who are the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we await eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies.
And I feel like every age needs that. You know, there's things that make us feel like human civilization can't go on with this or with this. And it's part of that groaning and longing for the world to be as God formed it and made it and will reform it. But there in the midst of it, you know, I think those groanings are the things, though, that say, okay, this is also right. We should lament these things, and we should take them in prayer over and over again, because things get changed in this slow birth process. At least, well, I don't know. Apparently some people have short birth processes. Mine were not, so...
Well,
But every story's different. Like, if you talk to women about their birth stories, they're all very different. And that's part of the thing, like how God brings us into new ways of life. They're all different.
because we are each individual and unique and together.
And journeys, every journey is a little bit different. Even the ones that really take you through the depth of things. That isn't where you want to be. Yeah. There's this card. I haven't sent it to anyone yet, but I have this card that I'm like, someday will be the right moment. And it's, just this simple, like, dark circle that's not all the way finished. And it says, if you're going through hell, keep on going. You have to be careful for the moment for that kind of card.
I've seen those, or that quote before.
Yeah.
Because somebody else had it, like, another side of that.
Well, I think they threw in a country song at one point.
Yeah, it's a couple, I believe.
I don't know. But that groaning, that longing, that pain and suffering can actually be a part of bringing about what is new.
And that there's a whole plan. And that feels like what we're living into in the rest of Romans, where it's laying out what is God's work in building the communities together, in drawing together Jew and Gentile, in the salvation that is for all. Mm-hmm. I'm skipping ahead and running a bit with it. But,
that's all right. Go for it.
Yeah, I love how that lays out. And you get into Romans 10, 9, 10. The youth director I worked for called this TNT, where it was the basic of salvation and a cornerstone he used in how he taught. Because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved.
Yeah.
And again, Paul is rolling through of what is this new, different looking resurrection.
But yeah, also how it applies in our lives now.
Well,
Like people will feel like, what is it? Like, resurrection, this is out of Barbara Brown Taylor, but it's actually Meister Eckhart from the 12th century. But resurrection is not something that happens just at the end of life.
and that's what
Yeah.
it's more of the resurrection in the spirit.
Yes.
And the end of life resurrection. I picture that like waking up without any creaks or groans or aches in the morning.
Oh.
Like, that's what's in my head, where it's, okay, that resurrection comes later. This one is the one we live into now.
Except birth processes are very sleepless.
Melinda was in labor for 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. But yeah, those clear, like, okay, when everything else feels like we don't know what to hold on to, those verses in chapter 10 are good to hold on to. Hold on to this. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And I think even in those moments where our heart becomes unsure, because we all have doubts, I still think there's that moment to say, I'm still going to lean into that belief. You know?
And the doubt isn't a bad thing. The doubt is a challenge that allows us to seek, find, and grow.
Yes. So you skipped the end of chapter 8.
I did.
Which is just, I mean,
I
that's
got
the part
excited,
we
sorry.
all need, right? In the midst of all of the suffering and all of the pain and all of the mess of life, you know, what Paul gives us is that nothing, not anything, not death or life or angels or rulers, anything that's in the present, anything in the past, anything in the future, nothing in all creation can separate us from God's love in Jesus. And there are lots of days we need that.
Well, and how he begins that ending in 8, verse 31, what then shall we say to these things?
Yeah.
If God is for us, who can be against us? There's a lot to hold in fear, but it's also looking in big picturing of God's got the whole of history already laid out. We just get to live into it in our moment.
Yeah.
And he thought that we'd be good in this chapter of it.
And I do also really like those phrases where Paul brings us back in, you know? It's like you need those in a sermon, right? Like, okay, I got a little bit lost. What then shall we say about things? Great. What do we say about those things? And, you know, you get that again in 9:14. What shall we say then? Is there injustice in God's, you know, part? Like, it just helps bring these things back together when, you know, sometimes I get lost in some of Paul's arguments. I don't think I'm alone.
No, remember, I'm still murder boarding chapter 7.
I don't love that phrase. Yeah, see, the problem is one of my favorite verses in Romans is 12, but that's for next week.
Well, I mean, that's today's reading as the podcast is out.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can that.
We could do 12?
Yeah, we could do 12.
Okay. I didn't read tomorrow's readings for the other ones, but I know Romans 12 well enough.
We can do 12 if you would like.
Yeah, I love 12. I love the transformed by the renewing of our mind in chapter 2. And that, you know, and that by testing you can discern what is the will of God. You know, there are other places we hear that, you know, you don't test God, and that there's times where it's like, well, you can, because you have to be able to have things to hold on to. But really, but 12:9 to 21.
So, and that's a huge section for you then? Why?
Because it is my favorite thing to read at weddings, unlike 1 Corinthians 13.
Weddings?
Yeah.
Really?
I like it for weddings because it's a way of life that goes with any relationship. Someone you don't know, someone you know, but those things to hold on to let love be genuine, to hate what is evil and hold fast to what is good. To outdo one another in showing honor. You know, to serve the Lord, to rejoice in hope, be patient, be constant in prayer, contribute to the needs of the saint, and to show hospitality. Like, that's about, you know, making sure there's space to be generous and there's space to share, you know, your home. To rejoice with those who rejoice, to weep with those who weep, to live in harmony with one another. And I love the way, where's that one part? And as far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. When I remember that, my marriage goes better.
See, that's interesting. I never considered it in terms of a marriage, but that's true. That is a beautiful application of that. I've always looked at it as this is the kingdom being lived into here and now. This is the mark of it.
Yeah.
That's not just, oh, here are the fruits of the Spirit and this is, no, these are actions. These are steps. They are
things you have to do, all of them.
And some of them, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. That comes at a cost.
Well, by doing so, you'll burn heaping coals on his head.
But it comes with a reward. Where that grace is, you don't look like the fool. Yeah. You're giving compassion in a way that elevates what is the kingdom. It looks different.
Yeah. As far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all.
I love that as a wedding application. I had never... Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. And because you can read it in such a way that it brings people back. Like, it is so hard to get the attention of a bride and groom.
That's fair, yes.
And they're only going to remember maybe two, I remember one phrase from my wedding that the pastor gave. And he was so smart, right? He probably said it 20 times,
Yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah, I got be God's gift of grace to one another.
I remember Melinda walking down the aisle, and I remember the pastor complimenting her on how good she looked in her dress, and how good I looked in mine. I wore a kilt. And that's it. That's what I got. That's kind of depressing.
Well, your wedding was a lot farther ago than mine was, so.
17 years.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
But I love that one, because there's different phrases that will really connect with people and give them, a starting place on that. And a lot of that stuff really echoes so well in Proverbs, too. It's seeking the things that are good and living into them even when it's not easy.
Yeah, I'm going to remember that.
It is one of the suggestions in the Book of Common Worship. Just because it's there, you'll remember it then as you go through the suggestions.
I've not actually spent much time in that section of the Book of Common Worship, so.
That's right. Right when I was ordained, the first wedding I did, Jeff Cabellius, who's a pastor at Second Press, gave me what he does for weddings. It's still what I use. It's great.
Hey.
Yeah.
If it works.
And it's not really, I think it's scanned in, but it was written on a typewriter at some point, right? Someone gave it to him.
But isn't that the beauty of these things? It's that tradition that lives on, that is established in generations.
And if it works, why not keep using it? Yeah. So it's fun.
Okay, that's Proverbs and Kings and
A little Chronicles.
Yeah.
Which is almost very, very similar to the King's passage, which is really interesting. In lots of ways about a path of wisdom, a path that seeks to live in peace, a path that hopes in God above all else, and trusts that God's love is there always.
And that's a fair question in this moment. How do we live into these things? Finishing with that section in Romans 12. Yeah, read that last bit of Romans 12 again.
Or for the first time, because it's really today's reading.
And then read it again.
Yeah. Peace be with you in the midst of this week. May wisdom come when you need it.
Amen.
Et tu spiritus Dominus